Sui, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and Bitcoin are going to be the topics of today, the community's favorite top market cap coins. And we'll just start off with top-down analysis going on Sui first, continuing with this very long-term thread of analysis that we've been having now. Really, it feels like since, I guess, mid or late April. So more than a month now almost. And as it stands with Sui, still corrective here. We have been looking for this thing to come back down after this nice move up to a closing price around about $4. This one is coming down right now and is short-term corrective. However, long term, that's not like a death sentence or anything like this. Ultimately, this probably is going to be an opportunity, but the short term and medium term can very easily carry on with a more prolonged correction here. Anyways, first things first, as I do reference my notes, I want to bring up my drawing tools right here or actually maybe go to this chart right here and acknowledge that yes, it has gotten stopped right at that 618 Fibonacci retracement, just around about $4. So, a nice technical region to be expecting a generalized pullback. And this is not like a death sentence or like back to new lows below April lows. I mean, of course, anything's possible, but a lot of things would have to happen before that becomes like a legitimized target. For right now, just a correction, bro, just a pullback, bro. Anyways, yeah, so as far as the daily time frame does go, I do want to acknowledge that, yes, there have been multiple drives of phantom divergence coming off of the last few highs here for Sui, and, planned out a short-term correction from that is to be expected. Not, again, anything super crazy. So the question becomes, how low can this thing come? Well, if you are still bullish in the short term on Sui, very likely at least somewhere between that 200 simple moving average, which is the white moving average right here, and that green 55 EMA. And that would give you a buffer zone between about 332 on the lower end to about 344 on the upper end. Somewhere in that zone right there, I do believe Sui will be getting to, regardless of whether you're super bullish or super bearish. If you are super bullish, you would be expecting obviously a higher low around that region, and for Sui to abruptly, turn around and, rally back up above $4, I suppose. But as long as Sui is below the newest and most recent price action pivot, which is Thursday's high at 420. Oh, great number, right as well. As long as it's below there, can't really be talking about any sort of like major, massive breakout to, prior highs and perhaps beyond as well. So, I would be cognizant of that. That again, coming off of the price action pivot from Thursday's high at around 420. On top of that, as far as stochastic momentum goes, all higher term timeframes here are corrective. We can see the daily timeframe continues to nosedive as long as Sui is below 402. The 2-day timeframe is going to be headed down as long as Sui is below 410. The 3-day timeframe is also going to be freshly coming down as long as Sui is below 401. The 5-day time frame is going to be crossing down on the next period, which closes tomorrow night, by the way, alongside the weekly, assuming that Sui does close below 388. And the weekly time frame will actually remain up as long as this thing's above 203. So, again, I'm not looking for like a major, massive, catastrophic fall, but I do think that this thing can correct, further onwards and southwards. And we should also be aware that, especially here on the daily, this is all within the context of very, 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 very low volatility. So when we see all these momentum oscillators pointed down at the same time, if volatility expansion does occur, then that's obviously going to favor downside. Again, it's not like fully, it does give a higher probability of that, is the point that I'm getting to. So yeah, anyways, I do want to also address, well, actually, no, the monthly is not super relevant right now. So perhaps we will forget about it. We'll forget about it for the time being. What I could also say about Sui is that, look, if this thing does really lose the green moving average right here at about 332, I think it was, on a multi-close basis, I'd say like 2 close bases. At that point, there is the potential for a much deeper correction. Again, I'm not calling new lows below the April lows, but somewhere around this moving average at around 2.5 to 260-ish region would make sense. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but somewhere around there would be about right. Again, assuming that it does actually lose this level, which is still well and far away. So first, I'd be expecting a bounce there. If it is going to be bullish, you'd be expecting a reversal there, and then for it to pop back up relatively quickly above 420 or so. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into Ethereum. Ethereum has been, I guess, more popular as of recent, just because, well, it's had a pretty fucking phenomenal move, as it typically does near the end of these sort of things. But let's go and look at the daily picture first. We've been looking at that white 200 simple moving average as sort of the bully that continues to hold the poor Ethereans back, unfortunately, and that is currently situated at 2,700. And we do see that the price action pivot is actually Friday's high, which is just a smidge higher than that. It's 2734, or is it 2730? 2732. Yeah, 2732 and a half to be exact. And so, as long as Ethereum's below there, can't really be talking about any sort of like major massive breakouts. I do think at some point it will break out above there, but does it play out a more prolonged correction alongside SUI as well first? I do think that that's definitely possible. Just like SUI very likely coming down, around that next major moving average, I would be looking for Ethereum to at least come down somewhere here at around 2400 or a little bit below 2400 and test the yellow 21 EMA. And then of course, if and when Ethereum does close back above about 2700, at that point, I think it's it's basically a foregone conclusion that this thing moves up to 33, maybe even 3500, maybe even just continues upwards and onwards from there, depending upon how the monthly does settle. But as of right now, yeah, short-term corrective alongside other things as well. And when we go into some of our other oscillators here, I do want to wait. Yes, okay, there it is. Sorry, going fucking retard mode right now. Going over to the daily time frame, we do see kind of a similar setup to SUI. Actually, daily momentum remains down as long as Ethereum is below 2644, like quite far away right now, almost $100 on that number. The 2-day time frame also heads down as long as Ethereum's below 2627. So again, more corrective signals. The 3-day time frame will turn down freshly on the next closure, which is tonight. So that number will very likely move up. But as of right now, Ethereum probably doesn't violate it. 2482 is the number to beat as of this moment. Again, this is within the context of very, very high volatility, indicating that we're probably going to spend a little bit of time consolidating sideways. And that does imply some downside as well. But yeah, as of right now, that'll remain up. Like I said, tomorrow, once we get the new open, I suspect that this will actually be probably downside angled. The 5-day time frame remains up above 1747. The weekly time frame, similar as well, 1521 is the number. And then, of course, the big one that I'd really be putting a lot of focus on is the monthly, or actually the monthly both for this look right here and also this look over here. So for the monthly, I do want to, again, acknowledge that the monthly has been building and is on the verge of confirming massive multi-drive hidden bullish divergence, which is, really, really powerful. But being a monthly can take a long time to play out, obviously. Maybe not so obvious to some people out there. But yeah, it can take a while to play out. And that will be essentially confirmed as long as Ethereum is above about 2400 by the end of this month. And that comes in, checking my calendar right here, about 1 week. A little bit more, or 1 week from today is the last day of May, so one day after that, basically. Anyways, yeah, assuming that Ethereum does just, hold above about 2400 by end of month, looks pretty damn good to me for, another try higher, probably in June. This is also potentially going to be combined with the monthly stochastic oscillator, which actually will very likely continue down for the month of May, and it has been essentially down ever since May of last year, so pretty much a full straight year. And again, just following the monthly stochastic oscillator for Ethereum has, been keeping us safe on this channel from being prematurely bullish. I mean, you might say that that's a little bit late if you miss this move right here. Sure, fair enough. But at the end of the day, we're talking about big pieces of price action when we're looking at the monthly. So very likely it will continue down for the month of May. But I suspect if Ethereum is going to be bullish for June, you're going to see this number, this pivot, go from 3369 to like somewhere in the mid to low 2000s. And if you see something like that, I think that's a pretty fucking obvious signal that this thing is going to be trading above threes. With a 3 handle like in June, probably, knowing the way that Ethereum moves, like probably even into the mid or deep 3000s. But again, you need to see that one close first. You can kind of see the higher term time frame, looking how all of these things interrelate with each other. And perhaps we'll look at some of the Ethereum pairs here as well. But I do just want to quickly also acknowledge that below the most recent higher low pivot on the price action pivot indicator right here, which is 2320, we can just look at the short term move as just a short-term correction. If Ethereum does trade below this low, and particularly close below this low, do get ready for a much more prolonged and deeper correction first. So I would just, be aware of that. Anyways, also, this one's caught around the 50% retracement level, I do believe. Yeah, pretty much to the, actually literally to the T there at 2745, which is effectively just a few bucks away from the current high for this month on Ethereum. Anyways, let's look at some of the Ethereum pairs before we go on into Solana, XRP, and the Bitcoins. But But first, we'll look at Ethereum, Bitcoin. I'm just curious what this one looks like still. I still think that this one is generally going to bounce higher from where it's at right now. How long does this take? Who the hell knows? I mean, this, again, is a monthly time frame. It can be a lot longer, to be fair. I do think at some point you're at least going to get a bounce up to about 3.25 million Satoshis. And if things, go a little bit better, then perhaps closer to 4 million Satoshis. But overall, I don't think that this thing is really going to make new lows from where it's currently situated at. You see that momentum also is just, at the fucking tip of turning around here. And I suspect that once we get into June, you will see that naturally move up. Of course, we don't actually know until we get through next week, aka the end of the month as well. But, I'd still be looking at this as likely to have at least a nice pity bounce, a pity bounce being effectively just a bounce of pity after retesting the prior macro low. So, most things will bounce along that, especially for an asset that basically has been in a full-on downtrend since September of 2022. Like, not fucking good. But, even if it did pop up to 4 million Satoshis, which I think is possible, that'll still be another lower high and does set this thing up for, rolling over even further to the downside over a longer period of time. So, Bitcoin continues to eat all of the altcoins. Anyways, let's look at Solana Ethereum really quick. Solana Ethereum, I still think that this one's topped over here. I remain with my top call on this one, meaning that I expect Ethereum to gain ground over Solana. This can, by the way, happen with both of them going up versus USD. It's just the relationship towards each other. But of course, if you do want to go by the book here and use the price action pivots, yes, technically you don't necessarily have a full-on confirmed downtrend just yet. It will be confirmed below the most recent price action pivot to the downside, which is about 5.5 butyrols, I guess. And if this thing does actually reverse, you'll know because it'll trade back above this past week's high. Anyways, yes. And by the way, if you're looking for the price action pivots, you can try this one out for free. The link is in the description below. It's quickly becoming like one of my most favored, like newbie friendly indicators, just because, well, I mean, it should be self-evident, like tells you where the pivots are, as the name would imply. And just so you know, a little bit of a forwards forwards look. Yeah, there's going to be some new updates coming, which I think are actually quite relevant to many people's interests. Let's look at SUI Ethereum. I wonder if this is no, it's not an included ticker, so we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Again, I think that this one is definitely topped over here as well. Has it actually officially entered into a downtrend just yet? No, it has not, but I think at least in the short term, you're going to see this level hit right here on the yellow moving average. We already see weekly mega divergence on the weekly stochastic oscillator and position to the downside. This thing looks like it's really primed, and the monthly is, well, not super problematic just yet, but goddamn, man. I mean, when this thing switches around, it's going to be fast. If you want to wait for the official reversal, you got to come back down below this price action pivot right here, which is very far away from current price action. But, I would personally think that while you're going to have bounces along the way, I do think that, it's going to look something like this, basically, like blah, 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 blah. And then if it's bearish, it comes down like that. If it's bullish, then obviously, to the fucking moon, right? Anyways, and then what's the last one? XRP. Yeah, XRP Ethereum. Let's see what this one's looking like on Binance, and topping out at the exact area that we have marked off here, and playing out the LARP lines as well. I do think that this one's going to come down closer to this price action pivot at about 7,900 butyrols or some shit like that. It's probably going to have a bounce right there as well. But I should note that the monthly really does look like a mega reversal here as well. So I do generally expect Ethereum to be gaining versus most shitcoins or most other altcoins during this next period. You're seeing monthly momentum turn down freshly, and this is actually a rejection of a major macro level here as well. And again, it can afford a major pullback and still be technically in an uptrend, but this thing could pull back very easily from where it's at right now, another 35%, just come down to the most recent moving average and put in a higher low. So I do think next move continues to be down, especially working off of these extreme conditions on volatility. So overall, Ethereum, I do think is going to be generally a better choice than most of the other things that we looked at today. Does that mean that it goes up more versus US dollar? Does that mean it just doesn't go down as much versus US dollar than the other assets? That's another question for another day, perhaps, but we'll move on into Solana now. And Solana, it's caught at almost the exact same position as you see most of these other things as well. Right below that white, my brain's breaking, my tongue's breaking as well, the white 200 moving average right here. Again, can't really define an actual breakout to the upside with targets into the 200 handle zone until you're back above, at least on a multi-close close basis right there, just or really closing above yesterday's high, Friday's high of like what 180. Oh, that's 187.5 or so. In the short term, yeah, I do think that it will correct at least a little bit more, like at minimum back down to the yellow moving average right here. That's a 21 EMA at 167.25. If you're full on like mega fucking bullish, you probably expect a reversal right there, and you'll know that that's fully confirmed if this thing does pop back up above Friday's high. And at that point, I think you're going to see 210, maybe even 220. By the same token, if this thing does falter and really start to come below the 19th of May's low, so this past Monday's low, I think, that is 159.5. If you do see it come down below there and especially close a daily below there, something else is going on. Something else is going on, and this thing is getting ready for a much deeper correction. But until then, give it the benefit of the doubt. I think right now is kind of the time to give most things the benefit of the doubt. But as I look through, I think there's something over here. No, it's over here. Yeah, as I look through momentum oscillators, again, I do have to be biased towards a short-term, at least short-term test to the downside. We got the daily time frame headed down as long as Solana is below 177.5. The 2-day time frame is going to be freshly down below 181. The 3-day time frame closing tonight is going to be headed down below 182.5. The 5-day time frame is getting up into the critical zone. That one closing tomorrow night, so it will update with a new number, but right now very likely does remain to the upside. And then of course the monthly, I want to give the same look on this one as Ethereum. As long as the monthly stochastic oscillator is positioned to the downside, which it will be on this month as long as it's below 243, I would treat it as Ethereum, when it was doing the same thing. It's like it doesn't really matter how good it looks on any other time frame. I just wouldn't be expecting any like prolonged mega massive uptrend as long as that condition is not met. So for right now, it all comes down to that for the long term. But in the short term, even in the short term, yeah, I think it comes down as well. It's just, does it actually put in a higher low right here and carry on with the bull party or not? That's a question to be answered on another video perhaps. But the triggering areas for both sides in this case, which is really what I want to focus this content on, because I think that makes it a little bit more actionable and a little bit more relatable, or at least hopefully. Anyways, okay. Yes, now let's move on to XRP, everyone's favorite corn to hate. Let me get rid of this, not relevant to what we're talking about. Let's go down to a daily over here, and let me reference my notes. Yeah, still stuck under that 50% retracement level. We've had this level marked off for quite some time. It's had a few stabs above, but no closures above, more importantly. And now we do see a phantom drive of bearish evidence come off of yesterday's high. So I would be looking at this one as a bit more short-term corrected, probably at least gets a wick down to the 200 simple, which is not that far away from current price action, like 224, 225 region. That would naturally violate the last most recent price action pivot. I don't think, I was going to say, I don't think that that's a death sentence, and it's not a death sentence, but if it does, I guess that correction could go on longer if you see closures below there. I would preferably use the 200 simple moving average in this case to judge that, just because when these things are like very, very close, I go with the more conservative of the two. So if you do see it close below there, yeah, at that point, okay, yeah, you probably see at least a correction down to like, I don't know, 210, 205 region, come back to it after that. But ultimately, this is just one range here for XRP. And as long as it holds this range, kind of have to give it the benefit of the doubt. That's really all that I got to say about that. Now let's go on to the next chart. Looking at momentum oscillators, similar position to pretty much everything else. Daily time frame is breaking one of the regressions coming in from the last few major lows here, that being the 2nd of April low, and then also, of course, the 7th of May low more recently. This one remains downside angled as long as XRP is below 248, which it is nice and well below right now. 2-day time frame will also be coming down as long as XRP is below 255. 3-day time frame is freshly crossing down, closing tonight as well, playing out as again another trendline regression rejection here as long as this thing's below 253. 5-day time frame is still going to be up above 204, so not a mega issue there. But the monthly is what makes me again a little bit more on the conservative side for something like XRP, and certainly open to a much more prolonged and deeper correction and pullback as long as XRP is below this momentum pivot here for the monthly. Same sort of logic as what we saw from Ethereum for that whole year from May of 2024 till hopefully June of 2025. But this one also going to be headed down freshly, by the way, assuming that XRP closes out this month below 273. Again, that pivot will update coming into the next month. But like I said, as long as it's below there, it's a little bit more risky. Above there, look, this thing's going to retest prior highs. It's going to make new highs from there. So I don't think that there's any like major reason to be like super, super aggressive, because, if it does prove itself, the upside is going to be immense, most likely. Anyways, we'll end this thing. Or actually, did I go over the No, we're good. All right, cool. Okay. And then last one to do for Bitcoin. I like to, as always, look at the weekly closure for CME regarding the HPDR bands. And I think that there's a lot of very interesting things going on right here. So Bitcoin did not close above the very specific number that we were looking at for yesterday's video, just below 111,000 US dollars on CME, which was necessary in order for me to be more bullish coming into next week, expecting, potentially some crazy rallies into like the 120 to 125 zone for CME. This is starting to look a lot more short-term corrective. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying this shit. I totally get that, and I totally understand where a lot of people are coming from. But at the end of the day, I got to stick with what I know. I got to stick with it. I got to stick with the signals that we get, because I know that more often than not, these are going to be correct. And realistically, I mean, getting a wick above here, does that really change anything that we were looking at from the past week anyways? No, it doesn't. It's all about closures. But I'll leave that topic for another day. Anyways, as of right now, or as of this closure, couple major things. One, rejection of the 61.8 level. So that was necessary to define like an actual breakout and continuation coming into next week. And two, it actually even closed below the last previous wick high for Bitcoin by, a decent margin right here. So I would be expecting a bit of a short-term correction for Bitcoin. Again, I've been misheard like a million fucking times on this regarding short-term correction and what that means. I'm not looking for this thing to reverse down to April lows and take out April lows and shit like this. No, but I do think you could very easily get at least a move down to that median on the daily, which right now is about 104. And personally, I do think that you'll get a move down closer to the 38.2 level overall. But, ultimately, Bitcoin is likely going to pull back into a pretty nice opportunity. But realistically, we just saw the first day of it starting yesterday. Now, I'll bring you over here to the weekly look for not CME, but spot price action. And this could further make me massively, massively confident in, a much deeper pullback. And that would be if the weekly on spot price action closed below the 50% level, which is effectively... I want to get this one exactly perfect. So just 1 second. Where is it? That is 107.231. 107.231. So right now it's, like a ball sack hair above. But if it closes, on or below there, or even very, very close to there, this is a setup for a bit of a pullback. But like I've been saying, after 7 weeks up for Bitcoin, which is a bit of an anomaly for Bitcoin, correction is to be expected. Like that's okay. That's healthy. That prolongs market cycles and whatnot. But looking at this right here, if it does correct, again, I'm assuming that it's going to close below. I don't know if it is. We'll see tomorrow. If it is, you'll know my thoughts on that. If not, then not. But if it does, I would assume you're going to get something like this, at least coming down to, somewhere around here, like $100,000, give or take a little bit from that number. If the correction does carry on further south, the next most obvious area is going to be about $95,000. And again, look, if Bitcoin did come down around here and reversed, it's just another higher low. And that would be a really fucking powerful higher low as well, just by the way. Anyways, I also do not want to forget this signal over here because it is still relevant actually for the 5-day time frame. We have seen 5-day BBWP go into a contraction phase. It is now officially below the moving average and contracting at the same time. And by the way, the 5-day is looking a little bit more like a rejection here as well from the 50% level, closing tomorrow as well. So, the 5-day below 108,400 will do that. And whenever you see a setup like this where Bitcoin or whatever asset you're looking at is, trending well above one of these major levels here and volatility goes back into a contraction phase, you're very, very likely to get a move back down to the median. Now, the median will massively adjust on the next closure, which comes in tomorrow. So right now it's like $90,000. This thing could easily rise up like another $5,000 pending tomorrow night's closure. So do be aware of that. But, it would be a very obvious and very common target for these sort of contraction phases on volatility. But again, that would still be a higher low, even if it came all the way down to, even if this thing came all the way down to $90,000, still a higher low. You got higher lows as long as you're above $80,000 essentially. So, there's a big range here. And, well, I think after about 7 weeks of just straight fucking upside, there might be a little bit of overconfidence in this market right now, but we'll see. Again, CME's closure has already failed that level. If spot price action fails it as well, I think that's probably a good enough signal for me to say, hey, yeah, this is the pullback. First area of interest, like I said, at least 104, but honestly, I think it will trade lower than there, like 100. And then below there, you got about 95 or so. So, a couple major areas of interest, and we'll, of course, update as it comes along as well. And I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. It's time to get off. Yes, we're getting off to sparring. No, I'm logging off to go spar. Anyways, as always, wish you the best bets. Take care. Much love and see you hopefully tomorrow.